Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to part 4 of this build of this beautiful kit from ICM. This is the ICM Sky Crane CH-54A Tarhe. So basically this video is going to be quite boring if you don't have the kit or have no interest in getting the kit. If you are building the kit, I think you'll find it very valuable because there are a few issues that I've come across. My own issues. The design of the kit is superb. There could have been a couple of little tabs here and there. You'll see me add pieces of plastic card for that, but that's just my sort of, I just want to make joints stronger, that's all, rather than have the risk of them cracking down the line. But I would suggest you do the same with bits of sprue or scrap plastic or some plastic card or whatever, because it will make those joints much stronger. The ones that, you get a joint that just comes together like this, if it's on an upper surface or something, and if you put a bit of pressure in it, it's likely to crack because it only has the sort of 1mm contact area, and it may crack open. So I've done that, and also I've gone through really the complete sort of building process to get you up to here, so that you've got your whole sort of main structure up together. I'm sort of filming this before I finish the video, so it's actually going to be a bit further on than this. But yeah, so if you were just watching for entertainment, bit of fun, whatever, you'll probably think, my God, this is just going on and on and on. If you're building the kit, or you intend to build the kit, then I think you'll probably find it quite valuable. So enjoy. Hey everybody, Nigel with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench. Welcome back to the channel, and here we are now with part 4 of the build of this beautiful ICM Sky Crane. And yeah, what a kit it's proven to be. So I'm filming this literally about an hour after I filmed part 3, and if you remember at the end of part 3, if you watch right to the end, well done. I'd made a little bit of a boo-boo. Since then I've had a little play with it. I've managed to get it all sorted, and I'll show you what I've done. I've got some weights here holding it all down. What I've done underneath, I've taped on these 2 plastic strips. These are like 1.5mm by 5mm wide plastic strips. Okay, and they're running across, and they're clear of any, you've got some raised areas here, there's some little raised bits and pieces, and they're also clear of these bloody lugs on the outside, which is what's caused me my problem. So now what I've done is basically gone round with the glue and sort of invigorated all the joints, and then I've got all this weight on the top, and it will get it down nice and flat. So that is one recommendation. If I'm going to build another one, if I do a video build, you'll see me start from scratch. Basically, I'll put these strips on before I start and then get it all done. The other thing I would recommend, I actually built this frame up in this lower piece. If you don't have these strips, don't do it the way I've said. I would probably glue this on a flat base and then add the lower piece. I wouldn't do it as they've done it in the instructions with all these pieces together either. So you pay your money, it takes your choice, but one of the reasons I do this is so that if I make mistakes, you can see me make the mistakes, and then you don't have to. So I'm going to leave it there, let that dry, and then I'll be back. Right, so here we are. It's Sunday morning, and it's a good 12-14 hours since we last looked at this. So, no, probably about 10 hours actually. So, still haven't glued this part back here, this D11. Still not sure that it's going to be okay, but it looks like it is. I've done some test fitting. Looks okay. These plastic strips, guys, they are imperative. What I did yesterday, I went around, this actual bulkhead here, I actually cut the bulkhead away so that it was able to move, and then put the strips under there and weighted it down. I also put plenty of weight on it, and I put fresh glue into all these joints, all the vertical joints, and then a lot of weight on it overnight. Now, if you don't know this, if you've got joints like this where it doesn't matter, you can splash the glue about and everything, you can sort of get a lot of glue on them, but a lot of plastic cement on them, let it get in there and let it attack, and just leave the weight on there, and basically it will soften up enough and it will level it out. And now we have an absolutely totally flat bottom. You can see on here that rule is absolutely, it's totally flat. So that's sorted that out. As I said before, what was happening, if you haven't been watching, you've basically got these pads here. I'll point them out. There's one there. Okay, there's one there, there's one there, and then there's one there, and there's one there. And when I did the back end, I said about being careful about putting weight on it because it's sitting on these 4 pads on the block and it's going to push out the middle. Didn't consider it up here, and what happened, I put all the weights on there and it ended up sitting on these pads, and this here, exaggerated, was bulged up. It pushed that down with the weights. So these plastic strips, they're like 4 by 1.5 mil, I think, and they are imperative. You just, if that's the right word, just get the weight on there, and it's sitting then on a flat surface rather than pushing down in an open area and just getting it. And what happens then when you fit the sides? When I came to fit the sides, what happened was I had a big gap here, I noticed, and I thought, what's the cause of that then? And now you can see the gap is gone. So that's pretty cool. Right, so let's get back to what we're doing. Now, you remember in the instructions, they told us to fit these parts here at this stage. Don't do that, I wouldn't recommend it. I think it'll give you fit issues. And then fit everything down onto there. No. So we've done 10. 10 was fitting that little tiny bulkhead on the back. So now the next step is 11, which is fitting these 2 side pieces. Now if you remember, this one here wouldn't quite go down. That was why I suggested not fitting these at the early stage. And what I've done, I've removed some plastic from here, and that enables it to go down. Now it will go down and it will butt against there and there. You have this, you have a cutout there and a cutout there, and it will butt against there, and that is your height set. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and down here we have this joint. Now it would appear on the real thing that these are sheets of metal, and there is a sort of butted joint, if you like. There's probably a member or something, a cross member, a square member or an L-shaped member in behind there, and you've got these 2 sheets of aluminium that just come out. You just get the edges of them. So that's what we're going to try and keep, and that's what ICM have beautifully moulded, and you can see the fit is absolutely perfect. So what I'm going to do is fit the other side on as well. I have actually removed some plastic from there, although I didn't think I needed to, but I did just because I just want to make it so that it's not tied up on there, it's actually sitting down here. So what we can do now, put that on there, and that we can check that we've got, it's butting up there, it's butting up there, everything's good. Right, so I'm going to get these clamps. These clamps, which everybody asks every time I use them, these are Rebel Hobby from Sweden. Lots of people want them, lots of people order them, and lots of people are waiting a long time for them because I use them all the time and everybody asks, and then they go and order some. So I'm just going to push that down there. For some reason that clamp is actually pulling it up. So I guess we need to weight it down or something, I don't know. And then I'm going to put the clamp on the back end. In fact, no, let's clamp it here first. And all I'm doing here is clamping the sides. All I'm doing is clamping the sides onto these bulkheads just to keep them in place. In fact, I'm going to move this clamp and put it vertical. And we need to make sure it's kept away from the glue joints. Okay, and then I'll put another one back here. Push down on them, clamp in there. Right. So there we go. So now those are held in place. Here we go. I'm hitting the camera now. That's going to be a common occurrence, I think. Yes, yeah, so for some reason that is staying up. That's okay. Right, so what we're going to do, I am going to take the plunge and I'm going to put some cement into these pieces here. We'll come in on the back side on them because the winch area is visible, obviously. I'm not going mad with the glue, I'm just putting a drop in each one. just enough to sort of tack it into place. I don't remember if I glued that one. I don't think I did. So there we go. Right. So with that tacked in like that, we can put it down on our block again and get some weight on it once again. Push that down. Push that down, and now they should all dry in the position we want them in. If they don't, we can just wet them again, peel them away, push them down. Notice I haven't put any glue at all on the bottom edge. Not yet. So I'll leave that to dry for, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. Just let the glue take a bite, and then I'll take the clamps off, because obviously the clamps are kind of pulling the sides around because the plastic's quite soft. So there we go. Okay, so now basically we are going to glue the sides. I took those clamps off. Perhaps clamping all that isn't a good idea, because when you clamp them it kind of pulls the panels in, and you end up with this sort of, you know, squashed in effect. I've had a little tiny issue with the fit here. I mean, you can see, I mean, what I'm talking about is next to nothing. The rest of it is just perfect. The fit is just perfect. That there, I think, is operator error. It looks like it has a small step in it, so I may have sanded a bit too much off the very corner when I've removed a sprue nib or something. I'm not sure, but you know, once this is all done, go along there with some Mr. Surfacer, and then remove it with the cotton bud with leveling thinners, and it will just clean that joint up beautifully. Same here. That one just needs to be pushed in a touch. So I'm going to get some quick setting on there and run it down here, and then just give that a little nudge inwards. There we go, and that's gone in straight away. There we are. That's all hidden underneath the undercarriage legs anyway. I'm going to put another drop of quick setting in there just to get some strength into that area, because it is hidden. Okay, so I think we'll go down the back as well. Down the back of there and down the back of there. So those panels are now fixed in place. The other thing I've done, I've gone round with the ordinary extra thin and just tapped where they sort of meet these lugs that stick out, because they sit down on top of those. So that's got that kind of held in position, and everything's nice and strong. Okay, what I'm going to do now, make sure my fingers aren't touching underneath. I'm going to take my extra thin. And it's imperative you don't have your fingers underneath. Make sure there's no tape on there, no rubber bands, nothing for the glue to capillary under. I'm just going to take some extra thin on this brush and just run it into these joints. Just like so. And that will go down in. It will capillary its way along. And it will get us all going. And we're just going to make sure we've got a nice strong joint. It doesn't need to be mega strong, it just needs to not crack. You don't want it to be cracking, because we're going to be obviously handling this for painting and decaling and weathering and all that sort of thing. If you're holding it back here, you don't want it to break. So I'm not going to touch any of that. I'm just going to completely leave that and let it do its thing. I'm not even going to put it down on its base, because, although that doesn't matter, because it can't touch, because those blocks are in the way, those strips are in the way, should I say. But basically now that glue will capillary around into all those joints, and we will get a lovely, lovely finish. And I've got a little bit of a step there, that's okay. Right, so having that D11 not glued in is a pain. So there we are. Leave that to dry, and then we'll probably just go along with a knife and just scrape the corner just to remove any upsy downy bits, and that's it, job done. And so, right, that's all dry now. I've moved these plastic strips back. I've put the fuselage down on this metal block. I put a weight on here, making sure those little protrusions were going through the holes, and then put a weight on here, made sure it's all nice and flat, and then I've glued this piece in. I've dry fitted everything. I am 99.9% sure it's going to be fine. I don't know why it's not fitted in the instructions. We may find out. We shall see. That's why I do these videos. If I make a mistake, you don't have to. So, moving along, we need now to get these rear sections fitted. Now what I've done here, on the very back end, you can see this is just a butt joint, there's no connection, so I've just put a couple of bits of plastic card now just to give them something to grip to. Okay, I was kind of tempted to glue them together, but I may not do that. And what I want to do here is get these fitted. We've got a groove in here that goes onto this bulkhead, which is cool. And then we've got, same again, we've got these cutout areas here where they sit down onto these pads. So that's going to go into that groove there and then sit down on those pads. And if you look here, the fit is just unbelievable. Look at that. Look how good that is. It's just unbelievable. It's incredibly good. Now, I can see I've got a bit of a step going on here. So what I'm going to do is just remove some plastic from here. So just a couple of swipes with the stick just to try and get that going down. I've noticed also, if you look here, I have a slight, this side panel could have come down a little bit lower, so I should have done the same on that. But I just want to make sure that this panel here fits a bit better. There we go, that's pretty much there now. I just want to come in with my knife and just clean out that corner. There we are. Right. Okay, we're good now. So that's going to go in there. That's going to pop onto that bulkhead. Like so. And that's going to drop down there. We need to make sure it's on the outside. It fits so well, it's all kind of fighting me, but it's just, it wants to go together, but it's just, I mean, that is just incredible. Look at that join there. And it looks like I could take some out of there as well. It looks like we've got a slight issue down this side where the lugs on the bottom that these sit on are a little bit higher than on the other side. But when you look at the assembly of this thing, it's just, I mean, I cannot believe how well this thing goes together. It's like that nose front end we did in part 2, or part 1 was it? I mean, the fit is just, when you look at all the curves and all the angles and everything, the engineers that have worked on this have done an absolutely stunning job. Absolutely stunning job. I'm just going to take a sanding stick to the top of that. I'm just going to clean out that area there where I've just scraped a bit of plastic from. Just a case of trying to get it to go down. What we're trying to get here, so I can explain what I'm doing, where this joiner here is, where you've got the bottom meeting the side, what we want is the two sides to come together like this. We don't want that, we don't want that, we don't want this, we want them to butt up together and meet. Now, as I say, I've got a imperfect joint there, but I've learnt my lesson from my second one. There we go. We've got a lovely join there now all the way down, so I know that's going to go in fine. So I think what I'm going to, I might put a piece of plastic card in behind there, we'll see. So I think what I'm going to do is just glue this to there, so I'll get the other side fitted as well. So again, we've got a beautiful fit. You see, this side fits much better. It just needs a tiny bit taken off of there. I'll just take a tiny bit out of here, just literally a few thou, and a little bit off of there, just to let it go down a touch lower. It's all in an effort to perfect that joint at the bottom. You can see it still wants to go down a touch. So I hope if you're building one of these, I hope you're watching this and taking it in, because I'm not trying to say I'm the master, not in any way at all. I'm not trying to tell you how to build your model, but hopefully you're picking up on the observations I'm making, and you'll do the same. Maybe even notice stuff that I'm missing. There we go, that's gone down there. Right, so just going to clean that corner out. There we go. So we can push that down in there. We've got a perfect butt joint there. Brilliant. Look at that, it's so good it stays there on its own. And then that's going to go down onto there, like so. Going to get that butt jointed up there, and then those two bits will meet there. They'll meet in there. Lovely. Right. So what I'm going to do is just glue these panels. I'm just going to glue these panels to that bulkhead. I think I'm going to do one at a time, and then I can manipulate them. I think it definitely needs something on the back of there because they keep wanting to pop in behind, so I'm just going to put a couple of bits of plastic card on there just to stop them popping right in. Right, so what I've done here is I've just basically put glue down the sides of that bulkhead there, and a couple of spots down on these four little pads here, and we can see that the actual fit of the parts is, as I've said already, it's absolutely impeccable. It's beautiful. I mean, when you look at that, there is no glue in there. Nothing. It's nothing. It's just free to move. You can see I've put those little plastic tabs in behind there. Obviously they can't stick out too far because of the angles and stuff, but I mean, that is just unbelievable. I mean, I cannot believe that fit. I'll pull it apart. Let it go. There you go. So I think what I'm going to do is run a drop of cement in behind there and then just leave it alone. Get some onto that tab. There we go, that's beautiful. And then I'll do the same on this side. This side isn't absolutely perfect, but it's like one of the best fits I've ever seen. Again, I think it might be operator error. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh with the sanding stick when I'm removing my sprue nibs. And what I'm going to do now is take this top piece. This has a slot in it, so it lines up with that bulkhead. Okay, and I'm going to tape. I'm going to tape this down like so. We can see once again we've got the fit on here is just out of this world. It's unbelievable, this thing. How have they done it? I mean, when you consider mold shrinkage and everything, unless they've got a really stable plastic, I mean, it's just, you can understand something fitting this well at the CAD stage, but when you physically make the parts from different mold tools, it's just unbelievable how good it is. I mean, look at it. It's just, I mean, none of this is glued. Look, none of this is glued here. I've glued nothing behind that point there, and you can see it's all just butting up. It's absolutely incredible how good it is. So that's taped together now, so those sides can dry in that position. Just pushing that bottom in a touch. It's just popped out a touch. But we can see there that butt joint is just This world, God. So I'm going to leave that to dry now. This is a case of doing bits, letting them dry, and then move along. And what we'll do now after is we'll move along to here, and we'll get all this glued together at the bottom. Obviously I'm not going to fit the top yet, and I'm not going to glue this up yet because we've got panels to go in there and a panel to go in there, and it would be easier to do repairs to this area if the panels don't fit. Having said that, they're going to fit perfectly, aren't they, looking at it? If the panels don't fit, I'd rather work on that than work on those panels and that corner joint. So I'll see you back ready to do that. I've done a few bits and pieces off camera. I've noticed that the here wanted to sort of sag, so I've put some tabs in. So I've got a tab in there. Just grab this tape, take this off. What I've done is marked out where these members came, and then I've drawn some lines and just basically put these tabs in so they sort of interlock when it goes together, and it just gives it a bit of support in that central area because it was just sort of sagging. The other thing I've noticed is, as you can see when you look here, there is a tiny gap in the middle. It's like these two faces are like that rather than flat. So just a couple of little swipes with a sanding stick on those ends should help reduce that gap. And if we get it so tiny, the extra thin will capillary down there anyway, and it will fill the gap, and then we can go in with some Mr. Surfacer or whatever if we want to. But basically, there you go. So having this flat block is just invaluable. The other thing I've done, I've put some sprue glue down inside there just to back that up some more, because as I say, I don't want it to crack. If you pick this up, deckling it, and you know it will find the weakest point and it will crack. So there we are. That's how that fits. That's going to go in there. That goes down on there. Absolutely stunning. Once again, we've got this radius area here, just like on the nose, and that's going to all just go together, and we'll sand that out beautifully. So there we go. I'm going to leave this now to dry for a couple of hours. I want that sprue glue to dry, so I don't want to go and pick it up and push these sides in. But yeah, and then I'm going to get on and do what I said on the back end. Okay, so this is all pretty much tacked off now, and I've done a little bit of work back here. I'll just show you what I'm talking about in the instructions so you know what I mean. This part here, D20, okay, don't glue it in, don't even fit it until you fit this rear end. And this part here, D11. D11 is the part that, remember, it said in the instructions we don't fit it in, and then here it is here. Okay, you can see it there and you can see it there. I fitted it. I don't know why they're asking you not to fit it, but anyway, don't glue them in, okay, until you're ready to fit these sides on. The reason being, there is clearance in this slot where this tab goes into this bulkhead here, and then there's clearance in the actual slots in this lower section. So in other words, it can all move around. So what I've done with mine, I've actually repenetrated it with glue, and then I've actually cut it all away. So you can see there, it's not fitted anymore. And now I can actually position it. You can see I can move it from side to side there. And what I can do now is I can actually get the correct position, because when I glued it in, it was like just a few thou out one way, and I was finding I couldn't get this join right on either side. One side was exaggerated, one side was like this, okay, and the other side was like that. So one was out and one was in. So if you leave it and get it right, then and get the fit right here, then it will basically fall into place. Now we're going to have to be really careful here with keeping this tail straight and everything. So what I'm going to do is I want to just get this bottom line here correct. I've taped the fuselage to the sides here so that it sort of stays in place. I'm going to get this bar out of the way. It's becoming a little unwieldy to handle. But what I want to do is get these corners together so that they're the best joint I can get. And then I've got a drop of instant super glue here. I'm just going to put a drop on the inside just to kind of tack that into place, and hopefully it will stay there. That's broken away. Put another drop in there. I've actually looked at some photos. If you go to Prime Portal, there is a good walk around of of one of these, and it shows you the joint I'm talking about. And it's actually a piece of, it looks like a piece of angle or whatever in behind. So imagine if this was a piece of angle, and there's sheet metal here, sheet metal there, and there's a slight gap. So having a gap having a gap here on this corner is absolutely correct. This is absolutely correct to scale. So ICM have done an absolutely sterling job here. Now, do the same with this side, get that joint correct. And notice I'm not using liquid cement, because if I did, A, it wouldn't dry instantly, and B, it would capillary under my fingers and make a right old mess. So I can put that in there. Just hold that, and hopefully that'll be enough to hold it in place. Now I know that some of you are looking at this and thinking ICM could have put tabs in there and lugs for it all to fit into, and yes they could, but I personally believe they might have been a hindrance. If you've had a bit of movement or a bit of shrinkage in the mould or whatever, I don't think they would make life any easier. Of course the easiest way to do this would be to slide mould the whole thing, but then that would be many millions of pounds in tooling to do something this size. So that's glued there now, so I'm happy with that. And that bulkhead, let's get our block back, that bulkhead should be central. I'm not going to glue it yet, because I want to make sure that this tail is in the correct orientation. You can see now it's helped having those tabs in there to keep that together, because that's going to stay together now. So what we need to do is not glue this, we're going to fit these panels in, because they're going to determine how this is all going to go together. And as I said earlier, it'd be easier to repair that than to repair these joints here. So that's all good. Right, so how are we going to do this bottom area? It's going to be I think it's going to be a case of tacking it with super glue and then putting the extra thin in, because you can't sort of hold it together with tape and then glue it, because it'll capillary. You can't hold it with your fingers because it'll capillary. I mean, it's almost staying there on its own if you look, but I'll get round. I think what I'm going to do is just hold it together and just tack it. So like just there, it's lovely. So I think what I'll do is I'll put some super glue down in there just to tack that together, and it's nice just there as well. So I think I'll put some super glue in there as well. Try and pick up a bit more. There we go. So that should dry and hold them together. I'm going to get some more super glue. This is the ASK Thin Instant Glue. It's really good actually. It's working really well. And I like the fact the lid isn't sticking on the bottle on me. So I just want to make sure we've got a decent drop in there so we get a decent stick. It's not going to weld it, which is why I don't want to glue it all with super glue, because it will crack. So that should hold that area. Then we can probably move the tape up and then just super glue next to the tape like a tack weld, and then we can run extra thin down there, which will give us our final weld. And there we go guys, back at the bench. Right, so we've got some weights on here. Cut the sanding sticks on there to support the weights to stop it rocking. But basically, there we go. We've got I've put some liquid cement down there. You can see down inside where you've got all the tacks of the super glue. So yeah, it's gone together really well. So we'll let that go hard before we do anything else. Now this rear section here is going to go in, and that's what they're telling us in the instructions to fit next. So that's going to fit in there, and I'm quite in agreement with their their process, because this will actually give us our squareness, because now we can get this tail square to the ground. Now I'm not sure, I need to do some research. Sometimes I'm not sure if the centre line will be up through here or if this side will be straight and this side will lean over. I need to go and check my references, but I think it's going to be central. So basically what we'll do is get a square and put it on the deck. You could even use a square block. Use 2 square blocks, get them perfectly aligned. Make sure they align, this edge aligns with the centre there, and then just make sure that we put the tail in the right central place. So I probably won't film that because it's going to be very, very awkward to do, so that you can see it because of the angle you're at. But we need to remove that tape from there, and we need to get another piece of tape to hold these plastic strips in, because I've realised that not only are these plastic strips giving us the lift we need to avoid those lumps and bumps going down the sides, it's also protecting all the rivet detail. This lovely detail on the bottom is being protected when we put it down and slide it around, so it's a double whammy. So there we are. Right, I've also run some glue down the side of that bulkhead unit there, which I probably shouldn't have done because it may need to be spread apart. Let's see how well it fits now. Oh, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. We've got a little bit of a sprue nib left on there. Need to be very, very careful with the cleaning up these edges. So there we go. Right, so all looking good. So I'm going to get this rear piece fitted, and I think then we're going to have to start thinking about some paint, because I want to paint in this area here and also inside the tail area, because we've got a hole in there, and we've also got a hole in the front where the shaft goes through for the tail rotor. So I need to do some research to see if that's zinc chromate in there, or if it's green, black, or what it is. So I'll do some research on the walk round on Prime Portal and see where we go. But in the meantime, I'm going to let that just set off, and then we can play with it some more. Okay, so for those that are interested, this is how I'm making sure it's centered. The ball is just a weight because it's nose heavy. So it's sat on this block. I've got the fuselage centered on the block up here by feel. It's obviously nearly the same width. And then back here, I'm going to get the fuselage. I'm trying to not get my head in the camera. I'm going to get the fuselage centered on the block. It's about 20.5 millimeters on each side. So I'll do this just to show you, and then I'll glue it up back here in front of me where I can see what I'm doing. And then basically I can hold the fuselage down on the block, and then I can pull the tail together and manipulate it, because the block is centered in this grid. These blocks are on the center line. So basically if I pull this over so the center line of the tail is on the edge of those blocks, then I know that my tail is vertical and centered on the fuselage. So it needs to be there. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm not going to do it now, as I say, because I can't do it, but that's how I'm going to do it. So another thing I've noticed, guys, I've been looking at the references to see what it's like, and the super detailers can go absolutely crazy with this. There's all sorts of cables and pulleys and all sorts up here. It's going to be fantastic. See, there may be stuff in the kit. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what's in here, but yeah, you can see there's some detail. There's a pulley there, so we can add detail and stuff. I mean, when I do my other one, I might go to town on it. It'll be a hell of a lot of fun. Also, up in here, I've looked up in here to see what colour it is, and God, the pipework and the cables and stuff in there, really go to town on it. So we can have some fun, maybe. Right then, guys, here we are. It's the next day now, and I've done a bit of work offline. So as you can see, I have gone round with sprue goo and added sprue goo in places all the way around to make the joints a bit stronger, just to back them up, because they've only got their actual little sort of 1mm wide band there of glue. So I thought I'd put some sprue glue in it just to back them up, because if you pick it up and it cracks, you're sort of buggered, because you can see here it's quite flexible. Once we put the top on, obviously it'll be less, but I want to be able to hold the back and do decals and stuff, as I keep saying. One of the problems, if I keep repeating myself here, guys, I'm really sorry, but this video is being made over like a long period of time, so I kind of forget what I said You know, for you it might be 10 minutes ago, for me it might be 36 hours ago, you know. So there we go. But anyway, so we've got I've moved the parts now on the bottom, the plastic strips, and as you can see, I've also painted the inside. Got a bit of dust or something in there I need to get rid of. There we go. I've painted the inside of here, and that's been done with Mr. Hobby, and I've used Mr. Hobby 304 olive drab, which is FS34087. Now, I've been looking around online and I found a fantastic article. I think it was on Brit Modeler, but somebody attached some wording from a document regarding olive drab around that period, and it would appear that olive drab on helicopters sort of up to the early 60s was this sort of greener colour. So this is the one I think is probably correct, LP28, and that is like your very green olive drab that you would perhaps expect to see like on a Sherman tank, or you know, a 6x6 truck from World War II, or even like, you know, Korea, something like that. But apparently then around 66 they kind of changed to this different, and you can see this is browner. You can see this is a browner green. Now I've actually mixed a little bit of green in this because I thought it actually looked, to me, it looked too brown. It almost looked like the sort of darker brown you see on an American Spitfire, and I thought it looked too brown. So I've added a drop of green just to knock it back a bit, and you can see we've got this. It's easier to see it on there. We've got this sort of olive drab, browny kind of colour, and when you compare it to the LP28, you can see what I mean when I say it's sort of browner. Then when you look at the olive drab 2 in the Tamiya, which is LP29, you can see we're going even greener again. Now we're really green. So I think basically you've got to sort of look at what you've got, look at what pictures you're looking at, and go from there. If you really are stuck on accuracy, you know, obviously pictures are really no good to you because, you know, it depends how old the picture is, how the camera was set up, what the sunlight was like, blah, 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 blah. But I reckon that, to me, looks pretty good. I don't think I'd use that on a vehicle. I think I'd go greener on a vehicle, but I think for this, it's perfect. So, there we go. Today is Monday, the 6th of March, 2023. And today I did my review on the Takam Apache, which arrived this morning. So that's all good. And today also my ICM Sky Crane has arrived, the one that ICM sent me for review. So lucky old me. So I'm going to carry on with this now. As I say, I'm waffling too much. The other thing I've done here, now, if you remember, I talked about moving this bulkhead around because it was moving the side panels out. I actually re-glued it in position, and I don't know if I've actually not pushed it down fully when I did it, but when I came to fit this rear end, I found it was being very slightly raised. Okay, so I've actually cut some plastic away from here and given it a sand. This plastic is so lovely. I mean, if I show you on here how lovely it is to cut, look at that. It's just absolutely wonderful. It's so nice. Just cutting that sliver off of there. Look at that. Look how easy that is to work with. You can see that's not a particularly thin sliver I've taken over there, but it's just so lovely. You know, as I said in my Takam review, I'm beginning to I think I prefer this to the border model. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same material. But I'm just removing some more just to make sure I've got clearance there, just to make sure we don't get any funny joints. But there we go. You can see I can just push it down now, so that's good. So we've got clearance there now, and that's a good way to check it actually, to see if we can actually push it down. It's solid there because there's a bulkhead, but we can see here. Yeah, I think I need to remove some from there. So I think that's probably, I definitely didn't unglue it here. So I think they've probably said that they would like us not to fit this part because it needs some trimming. So rather than tell us to trim it, they probably thought just don't bother fitting it. But I would rather have it there. This isn't cutting so easily, is it? I can't quite get the angle of the knife right to keep it dug in but not digging in, if you know what I mean. There we go. And I think that's probably the problem, is what they've done. I think they've designed this. They've designed this so it sits in a groove in this upper surface, and then they haven't put the groove in. So it would have been a mishap on the CAD design. But I mean, if that's the only mishap in this kit, bloody hell, they've done a... I've actually emailed them today and asked Dorina to pass on my email to the engineering design department, whatever, because it's just superb. Right, so that's that all carved out, so I'll get rid of that plastic. And yeah, I'm going to take a bit more off of there as well. You can see how lovely it is to work with. There we go. So there we are. That's going to fit lovely now. But what it's doing, it's giving us, you know, if you do pick it up here by its tail, you've got the strength of that, you know, because that is firmly glued to the bottom. So as you know, something perpendicular to the lower face is going to give it a lot of strength. So I grab that there. So I'm going to get on with something. The first thing I've got to do, I can't concentrate at the moment because Jess, as you know, has just had an operation and she's wandering around under my feet and I don't know why. She might want to go out. Let's go and see. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a couple of rubber bands here ready to go. I've put some flat varnish in there now. I've used Tamiya flat because it's not actually dead flat, but it's very tough. So it's just what I want. I just want to, you know, you can see it's just got a very, very slight sheen to it, but it's great for adding washes and stuff. It doesn't sort of soak in. So we'll do that afterwards once I've got it all together, and then we'll get some washes in there, I think, and have a little play with it. So in fact, I really ought to get a wash in there now, didn't I? Because it's going to be very difficult to get into this side wall to remove any excess wash. I'll do it after. So I'm not going to put that panel in yet. I'm going to put this panel in first, and that's going to go on there, and it fits absolutely wonderfully. You see I've got a couple of rubber bands here in waiting. So I'm not going to use tape because the tape doesn't, well, I'm not going to use tape initially. What I want to do is get some glue on top of this area here and then get that clamped down so that dries nice and solid. So we're going to get everything out of the way because sometimes this white glue, so it's not white glue, it's the white lid, the Tamiya white, the glue can actually drip off the shank. So you've got to be very careful on your, you know, about other parts that are around. So that should sit on there just like so. It just fits on there so beautifully. There we go. So that's going to sit down there, and I'm going to grab this red rubber band and roll it up. So I'm going to hold that in there. And this is what I'm saying about when we start working on the model and we start pulling it about. This is why we want nice strong joints. There we go. So that can hold that down there. And I'm just going to put one over the back, just like so, just to get it down like that, just to hold the back end in place so it sort of dries in its correct form. Let's pull that down a bit there. There we go. So that's kind of in the right spot now. So we'll just leave that for a few minutes to dry, and then we'll start doing the rest of it. So I've got my weapons of choice here. I've got my glue looper for the super glue. You can see it's just basically a stainless steel thing in a knife handle. You can get them all over Amazon and everything. A cotton bud, very important tool. And I've got my good old trusty Pringles lid here with a coffee lid underneath it, and ASK's thin instant glue. Now, I wasn't expecting this. He sent me a package of stuff to review on the channel. If you go back and have a look, you remember I did a review. Not because I'm not saying this because I got this for nothing. I think this stuff is bloody awesome. If you look on the bottom, it says 20th of the 1st, 22. So this glue is 15 months old and it's still absolutely fine. We all know how super glues go off. This stuff obviously lasts a long time, and I do really, really like it. The other thing I like about it is the nozzle, the lid doesn't appear to stick. So I prefer my VMS black glue for applying parts, but for doing things like this, I prefer to use an instant glue. The VMS black is not an instant glue. It takes a while to go off, but that's because it has like I think it has a rubber content in it. But also, if you put this on top of the VMS, it dissolves the VMS, and you get this combination of the two. But what I want to do here, you can see I've got this gap here, and I can squeeze it down my finger, but it comes back. Okay, so what I want to do is just tack this down, almost like, again, like a tack weld. And I'm going to be using super glue to fill the seam as if there's going to be any seam. the same as I did with the nose, and then basically sand it out, protecting the rivets with masking tape and everything. So I'm trying to choose the best place to put the glue, and I think it's going to be about there because it needs to be pushed in as well as down. So I'm going in with the side and down with the top. So I'm going to put a drop of this, literally a tiny drop, into here. If I can get my glue looper to pick it up. The trouble is with thin super glue, the glue looper often won't pick it up because it's so thin. I don't think I've got anything. No, I haven't got anything there. So I'm going to do is close the end of the glue looper up a bit so it's smaller. It might pick it up now. There we go, it's picking it up now. So I should be able to put a tiny drop of glue in there, into that joint, push it in place, and then cotton bud the excess off. That should stay closed. There you go, you can see how good that super glue is now. So absolutely tiny little drop into the joint, get it in position, cotton bud off, and because it's such a tiny amount, if we've made a mistake we can easily break it. And all I'm trying to do here is this is not to glue it, this is just literally, what I'm going to do here is lift this up, just get a drop in there and then close it up, cotton bud. This is literally just to tack it in place before I properly glue it. And you can see there, we now have a pretty seamless joint there. So I'll do the same on the other side. I'll leave the camera on, then I'll do the same all over the thing, but I'll do that off camera because I don't want to bore you to tears or bore you more than I am already, put it that way. We've got the glue in there. Now you can see what I mean when I say this stuff is good, this glue is good, it's absolutely bloody awesome. I'm not sure any glue went in then actually. No, it didn't. Get some glue into there. There we go. And up here, I'm going to push it out because there we go. You can hear that glued instantly. You heard it crack when I pushed it away, broke it away. So there we are. So that's that all done. That's all tacked in place. So now we can get in there with some extra thin and just run it into the joint. Now what we can do here at the front, we can put some extra thin in here and it'll capillary along. We can put some in there as well. That can run along. What we could do is make up a sort of hook tool or something and brush it in from behind, but I shall brush it in from the front. And I will literally just get some extra thin on the brush and just literally tap the joint. As long as you just tap it, don't touch it, don't go wiping this off with a cotton bud because you'll make a mess of the plastic. That'll get in there and get that well together. So I'll do the rest of this off camera and then I'll come back and show you how I do the back piece. Okay, so you can see how that looks now. Now it's sort of dry. I fitted this piece as well, just the same thing, put it on, a few dabs of glue around the edges. You know, as long as you just tap it and leave it, don't touch it, you're safe with Tamiya Extra Thin. It won't leave a mark on the plastic. I can probably show you on here. I mean, this is going to be invisible anyway. But if I just put a little drop on here, you can see that drop on there. Okay, I hope you can see it. Anyway, there's a drop of glue on there, and that will just evaporate, and it may leave a slight mark, but it would hardly even show under paint. It's not going to be. So you can see I've got little rubber bands on here. I'm holding this down. I'm going to have to be honest, I have had to sand. I've got one of these big Infinity Zebra sticks, which are perfect for things like this, because it's big and hard and square, and just sand the top of these bulkheads off. I'm kind of looking at all these parts, and you can almost see it. You can see it definitely on here. These parts, they're not flat edged. They're kind of, I don't know if you can see that on there. They're kind of like the edge is like a chevron. They're not like this. Sorry, if you imagine the end is like, you know, this is the edge of the part. It's kind of V-shaped. It's got a raised center area, and I'm thinking, I don't know why they've done that, because if anything, it would make the part lock in the tool. But basically, unless it's the two halves coming together, and they've got a bit of a chamfer on there. But basically, I'm not sure if the CAD designer has worked to the edge and then the taper has kind of lifted it. But it's funny that I've had to remove a little bit from here, a little bit from there. I had to remove more from that one, to be honest, that one in the middle of there. You could, I mean, what I would do, if I, well, not if, when I build this, I've got another one over there behind me. When I build this again, I will take that part, D11, and I will literally get a knife and just cut sort of 2mm off the top of it. And then you'll have all the rigidity of it being glued here, here, and on the base. So it's making it nice and strong without relying on this joint here for all your strength. So yeah, I've had to sand off the top of there. I'm not going to glue this down onto there because I don't want to. I was going to put some wash in there first, wouldn't I? We'll do it afterwards. So this has all gone down nicely now. If anything, it's a little bit tight there. I need to sand a bit more off, which is a shame, which means I'm going to have to take all these rubber bands off again. But it is actually slightly, you can hear it. I wonder if I can hold that down with a bit of drop of super glue and if it'll stay down. No, let's do it right. Let's get it all off. And we're back. So these rubber bands, these here, you'll see them, if you're in the UK, you'll see them in bags for like £2 or £3 in Tesco's. Don't bother, they are absolute garbage. You can see that at least, I think all 4 of these broke when I took them off. And quite often, if you have like a pair of warped fuselage halves or something and you get some rubber bands and you want to leave it overnight to set, you know, you could get them next morning, look at it, and the rubber bands are all over the table and your parts have come apart. So honestly, don't trust them. These come off the road when the postman drops them. They're the best rubber bands by far. So I've got it all held down over rubber bands. I've also gone in, I don't know if you can see in there, but I've also gone in and done some wash and some dry brushing. So happy with how that's come out in there. So there we go. Right, if we get the light above, does that make it better? It's very weird because the camera is forming a shadow, you see. So anyway, that's that. So we're going to start looking at getting this glued on. And I'm going to make sure I've got this pushed back, because as you can see, I can flex this and make it come apart. So I'm just going to make sure that's pushed back nice and solid on there. Everything's nice and straight, isn't it? Nothing's twisted, I don't think. That's the problem with having rubber bands on there, I suppose. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is, with extra thin, is come along and deal with that seam. And I hear you shouting, no, you can't do that because the glue's going to come out and capillary under the rubber bands. It won't, as long as I don't put too much on there. Okay, if you're really worried about it, what you can do is put cocktail sticks under to keep the rubber band away from the joint. Trouble with doing that with this, with all this raised riveting, you're likely to damage the raised riveting. So what we're going to do is, with tiny amounts, I'm going to put glue in here, just a tiny drop in there. And the first thing I want to do is get this end butted up. Because as I mentioned before, we've already got an issue with this. These, you can see that joint isn't straight. I don't want to sand too much off. You've got a little gap in the middle. But I've got those tabs under there and they're going to help. So I can just put a drop in there and let it go down in. Never go back to the same spot. Put a drop in there and let it go down in. There we go. Don't touch it, let it dry, it'll be absolutely fine. That's a bit too much on there. Go in that, drop that in and let it go down in. It'll go into the joint. Okay, and we want to get this joint nice and strong, because we don't want it to start cracking on us, do we? So there we go. Right. So that is all good. So that's that back end done. And then we'll go over with brush and mister surfacer, off with the cotton bud with leveling thinners, and it'll be lovely. Right, so what I'm going to do now, come along, tiny drop of extra thin as a rubber. Like I told you, that's exactly what they do. They're absolute garbage. So, and that was the most critical one I wanted in place as well. Bloody things. This is one of them as well. Look, I expect this is going to break. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of them and put the proper ones on. Okay, I've just done one of my favourite old tricks again. I've turned the camera on when I didn't want it on, and I've turned it off when I did. So I've basically gone around and glued all this on with the camera switched off. And then the bit where I was cussing and swearing about these crappy, after the filming, I was swearing and everything. So you don't want to see that. But yeah, absolute crap. So all I've done is basically gone round, there are my word basically again, I've gone round with extra thin with a tiny drop of glue on the brush and just literally touch in an area like here, just touch it in an area and let it capillary along a little bit and just leave it alone. I'm going to leave that now for about half an hour to cure, and then what I'll do is I'll take all the rubber bands off and then I'll go around and I'll do the same as I've done back here, and I'll put a dab every sort of 6-7 mil or whatever, make sure it's nice and strong, because there's no other way of gluing. I mean, you could put glue on there first of all and then put it down, but then it's going to ooze out and you don't want that. If you have got a slightly uneven edge anywhere, like you can see here, it looks like we have a sort of different step there than we do here, for example. That's absolutely fine, because I've looked at pictures of the real thing and it is kind of like that. It does step up and down a bit. So don't worry too much about that. And when we put the Mr. Surfacer in there to get rid of the gap, as it were, it's not really a gap, it's a step. But when we put the Mr. Surfacer in there, it will get rid of all that. It will look absolutely wonderful, and it will be a, what's the word I'm looking for? A credit to ICM's fantastic design that this is going so well. And that joint there, I've put more in there. You can see that gap has now disappeared. It's become molten plastic in there. And because we've got the tabs in there, you can see I can push down on there and it's quite strong. I've also added a tab on the front here, but because the forward section, the bit that goes over the cockpit, is thinner plastic, you can see I've also put a piece of 10 thou card on there. If you can see that, so it just, because it steps up. So just basically, we put some behind there to strengthen the joint, we put some down there to strengthen the joint. It's just getting these joints strengthened, because you know, if you squeeze it, if I didn't put those tabs in there and I just squeeze that now, it would just split apart. So that's why I've done that. Same on the sides here and everything. So did I mention that I'm really pleased with how this is going together? I'm not sure if I did or not, but I am really pleased with it. It's very well made. And there we go, guys. All glued up. Basically took all the rubber bands off and then just went in with the extra thin and let all that penetrate. And I should probably give it another little go with the extra thin, and then we will go along. What I'm basically going to do here, the same as I did on the front, on the nose, I'm going to go along this seam with some black super glue and then sand out, protecting the rivets. Some of it doesn't even need it, it's that good, but do it anyway just to make sure it's all nice. So I'll do that on there. I'm not going to bother filming that. I think I've bored you enough with this one. And then here, across here, and then all the way underneath, I'm going to use Mr. Surfacer and then remove it with a cotton bud with leveling thinner, and that will get us a lovely seam-free joint. But I'm absolutely gobsmacked at how well this has gone together. It's beautiful. It really is absolutely beautiful. So as I say, yeah, sorry if you've been bored to tears. I did put the bit of talk at the front of the video to explain, but I think to those of you that are maybe, you know, not advanced modelers, not, you know, only got a few kits under your belt, I think some of the tips I've given here will really help, both in what to do and what not to do. and at the end of the day, we have a lovely flat, square, tail-centered, straight assembly, and it's going to look absolutely bloody stunning when it's sat on its wheels. I think what I'm going to do next, as I said, I'm going to do all this, and then in the next video, I think we're going to start and work on the undercarriage housings, because we've got, it's telling us here to put this on. I'm going to actually fit this roof section here to the front of this. I'm not going to put those levers in yet because they'll get broken off. And then when I've got that on, I think what I'm going to do is get this all mounted up onto the cockpit, and then we'll fit that rear panel in and make sure we're going to fit nicely with this and everything, which is one of the reasons for doing this before we finish the cockpit. So we shall see how that goes, and then what we'll do is we won't have the cockpit glued on, we'll get all that done, and then move forward. But I think in the next video we'll be working on these undercarriage legs as well. I'm tempted to build these sponsons up, these units here that go around these legs sticking out here, and not fit the undercarriage leg, because they don't look strong enough. I must be honest, they don't look strong enough to support the model, but we shall see. I'm going to fit them at the end when we've got it all done, I think. And I'm kind of hoping that someone like Aerocraft will come out with some brass undercarriage legs for the nose and the main gear, because they'll be much stronger, and they should be quite easy to make because of design, where very much like the Hobby Boss B24 in 32nd scale, they kind of fit inside that pod, so it'll be easy for them to make them fit, and they'll be much stronger. If I fit them now, they're going to be kind of in the way and sticking out, and we don't want things protruding. So I think what I'll do is build these sponsons up like this, and then fit them, get the seams all nice and everything, and leave the actual undercarriage leg assembly, like this part here, leave that off until after. So anyway, that'll be for part 5. But as I say, I'm going to get a lot of work done now off camera, so as not to bore you to death anymore, and then we'll come back and start getting this thing together. So there we are. So thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. As I say, if you haven't got the kit, you probably haven't enjoyed it at all, if you even could stand it. So if you're still with me, still at this part of the video, well done, you've done well. And I'll see you all for part 5 when I'm ready. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.